And finally tonight, once again, a ground zero debate. The controversy involves a proposed Islamic center slated to be built where a vacant clothing store now sits, just 2 blocks from the World Trade Center site. The Cordoba Initiative, a group that says it aims to promote positive interaction between the Muslim world and the West, plans to build a 13-story community center, including a mosque, on Park Place in Lower Manhattan. Opposition has come from several quarters, including some families of 9/11 victims.
They can have that mosque, but have it somewhere else. I don't want it overlooking the site where my son was murdered that day by 19 Muslim terrorists.
A prominent Jewish group, the Anti-Defamation League, also came out against the mosque, as have some politicians, including former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, who sent a message on Twitter asking peaceful Muslims to, as she wrote, repudiate the mosque. But the project has also received strong support from many other civic groups and leaders, including New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg.
Should government attempt to deny private citizens the right to build a house of worship on private property based on their particular religion? That may happen in other countries, but we should never allow it to happen here.
And last week, the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission voted unanimously to allow the construction.
All in favor? Aye.
The Ground Zero mosque debate is the most high-profile of several similar battles around the country. In Nashville, for example, a proposal for a large Islamic center has met with angry opposition.
They're taking Christ out of everything. And, you know, with the mosque coming here and right next door to a Baptist church, I'm afraid it's just going to get worse.
At the same time, at the Pentagon, another site of 9/11 attacks, the Department of Defense has regularly held Muslim worship services. The next one will be this Friday afternoon. Meanwhile, the New York City fight isn't over, with lawsuits possible. And just today, the city's transit agency approved a new ad opposing the mosque that will soon greet commuters on some New York City buses. And New York's Governor David Paterson offered state assistance to Cordoba if it does decide to move the site further from the World Trade Center. Many voices have weighed in on this in recent days. We hear from 4, including 2 who lost relatives in the 9/11 attacks. Charles Wolf is a commercial pilot who lives in Lower Manhattan. His wife was at work in an office in the towers. Neda Bulerci is an Iranian-born American citizen who lives in California. Her mother was on one of the planes that struck the World Trade Center. Also joining us is Nihad Awad, Executive Director of the Council on American-Islamic Relations, the largest Muslim civil liberties advocacy organization in the United States, and Michael Medved, a nationally syndicated radio talk show host whose show reaches some 4 million listeners weekly. Charles Wolf, I'll start with you. You've spoken out in favor of building the mosque as an example of American tolerance. Explain.
Exactly. First of all, I should say I'm not a commercial pilot. I'm a private pilot, but
Sorry.
That's not my profession. I firmly believe in 2 things. Number one is I will not paint all Muslims with a broad brush. These were extremist terrorists that did this, and I know many very, very good, upstanding citizen Muslims, and there are millions of them around the country. So I will not stain all of them with what they call guilt by affiliation. Number 2 is that we were attacked on this on September 11th because of all the tenets in the First Amendment: freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom of speech. And for us to then roll back the freedom of religion, to me, is just falling right into their hands.
All right, Neda Bulerci, you wrote in an op-ed piece that a mosque would transform the site, quote, from a sacred ground for reflection to a battleground for religious and political ideologies. Please explain that.
Thank you so much, first of all, for having me. And Mr. Wolf, I wanted to give my condolences to you. I obviously understand very much how you feel. I just wanted to very briefly say that I am not against the religion itself, but I deeply feel that this particular site has turned into a sacred ground, and I do not want it to be used for political ideologies of people who think that this building might become a peace offering to others, and I don't think it will. There have been many mosques that have been built before September 11th, and there will be afterwards. And none of those mosques created any more communication than this one will.
Nihad Awad, you have decried what you see as a false blending of radical Islam in this proposed center. What do you see going on?
Well, unfortunately, Jeff, this issue has been based on a lot of misinformation. There is misinformation and misunderstanding. I too, sympathize with the families and the victims of 9/11. But the ones who have organized active opposition to the Islamic Center in New York are basing their activism on a false assumption that the attacks has to do anything with the Muslim community or with Islam. The Muslim community roundly condemned the terrorists repeatedly. On our website, we have 60-page compilation of statements from major clerics in the United States and around the world. The second thing, it is not a mosque. It is not on ground zero. The Muslim community has owned that property before 9/11. But there is also an attempt to de-Americanize Muslim Americans, that they are the others. And we reject that. We are Americans, and in America, we are all equal. And the terrorists would like to pit us against each other. And we hand them, if we do, we hand the terrorists a victory if we submit to their.
So, Michael Medved, you've discussed this on your program. Misinformation, false impressions. What do you see going on? Why does this resonate with your listeners?
Well, I think there are false impressions on both sides. And just as Mr. Awad said, and he's right, that the entire Muslim community shouldn't be associated with terrorist ideology, by the same token, people who question the placement of this mosque shouldn't all be treated as bigots and haters and people who want to demonize all of Islam. There are dozens and dozens of mosques in New York City. I think this is what people have called a teachable moment. It is a moment for better communication. And I would urge the people behind the Cordoba initiative to go ahead and accept some of the offers that have come forward to find a better, more appropriate place that isn't polarizing, that isn't controversial. I happen to believe that one of the reasons that people react so passionately to this is because of the lack of building anything else at this site. I mean, it's been a terrible, terrible gap for 10 years. And for one of the first high-profile buildings to be an Islamic center seems to court the kind of polarization and the kind of disagreement that really is unnecessary. I, for one, would be glad to help the people behind the Cordoba initiative find a place of a few blocks north or anywhere else in Manhattan to build a more appropriate location for actual understanding and coming together that they say they want.
But why, staying with you, Mr. Medved, is it the particular place, the particular mosque, or is it the larger issue of Islam, the larger questions of extremism?
No, it's the larger idea, and I think that a number of people have talked about the controversy before with the Carmelite nuns, who are wonderful people, having built a convent right adjacent to Auschwitz. It was insensitive. Not that they didn't have a right to do it, but Pope John Paul the Great understood that, yes, if we want understanding and if we want the kind of discussion here, there shouldn't be any claim of triumphalism. And I think that one of the difficulties here is the towers having been taken down. It's true that Muslims died on September 11th, but a very small percentage of the victims were Muslim. 100% of the perpetrators were Muslim. It gives the entire site a different meaning if that site is literally built under the shadow or remains unbuilt under the shadow of now a looming, very substantial Islamic cultural center.
All right, let me bring Charles Wolfe